What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel once again. So, we are only a few days away from the biggest fight of Jake Paul's career as he's set to face UFC legend and former middleweight champion Anderson the Spider Silva. Now, speaking of middleweight champions, one man who has seemingly backed up Jake Paul to win this fight and beat Anderson Silva is none other than the reigning UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. Adesanya was recently a guest on Jake Paul's podcast and he had this to say. As you can see, Adesanya clearly knows what Jake Paul is getting into with this fight because, of course, Adesanya himself is someone who has faced Anderson Silva in the past. They had that incredible 3-round fight back at UFC 234 in Australia. Izzy, of course, won that fight, and it was really a chess match to say the least. But getting down to the actual topic of conversation here, Israel Adesanya seems to be firmly on Team Jake Paul for this weekend. I mean, I probably understand why he has picked Jake to win this fight given the fact that the two men have been friends for quite some time. But my question is this a wrong look for the sport of mixed martial arts? I mean, don't get me wrong, Adesanya is allowed to pick whoever he wants, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people won't be pleased with the fact that the current UFC middleweight champion is picking Jake Paul over the greatest UFC middleweight champion of all time. Someone who, let me remind you, Israel Adesanya is actually looked up to in the past. I mean, it is no secret that Silva has sort of motivated Adesanya and has also motivated a certain generation of fighters. And of course, Adesanya himself, in my opinion, comes under that category. At the end of the day, if Adesanya was simply being a neutral, I would have been perfectly okay with his decision and his prediction for this fight. But for him to go out there in public and say that he wants to see Jake Paul shake up the world against Anderson Silva, and by beating Anderson Silva, that right there, my friends, is quite the statement from one of mixed martial arts' biggest and most powerful champions at the moment. I mean, let's just be honest. The MMA fan within me absolutely doesn't want to see Anderson Silva get knocked out or lose to Jake Paul in general. I simply just don't want that to happen. I will give Jake Paul all the props in the world for actually taking this fight, but I simply cannot bear the fact that Jake Paul is going to solidify his place as a legit boxer at the expense of the greatest UFC middleweight champion in history. The legendary Anderson Silva's legacy is going to be on the line this weekend. You can argue against it all you want, but it is not going to look good when Silva loses to Jake Paul. Tyron Woodley losing to Jake Paul was alright. Ben Askren losing to Jake Paul was alright. These guys were former champions as well. They had legendary careers, in my opinion, but none of them were pioneers of mixed martial arts. Anderson Silva was a pioneer of mixed martial arts. He is one of the goats of the sport. He is one of the goats of MMA, right up there with the likes of George St. Pierre, who, by the way, is going to be co hosting Silva versus Jake Paul. So yeah, could you imagine if someone like GSP comes out of retirement for a boxing match and loses to Jake Paul or any other YouTube boxer for that matter? That is going to be absolutely ridiculous. And similarly, it's going to be quite ridiculous if Jake Paul beats Anderson Silva as well. And this isn't just me um, hating on Jake Paul. I'm absolutely not doing that at the moment. It really takes a lot of balls for a fighter, to actually step into the fucking ring with any sort of fighter that be. So yeah, props to Jake Paul for actually being committed to the sport of boxing. But at the end of the day, the argument remains the same. And when you have a MMA representative, a current UFC champion going in public and betting against Anderson the Spider Silva, that's when you know that it's not a good look for the sport in general. So even if Anderson Silva is in his late 40s at the moment, I will absolutely have to go for a victory for him this weekend. I probably cannot live with the fact that Silva is going to lose to Jake Paul in case that happens after years of domination in the UFC and after the legacy that he has created through his mixed martial arts career. And to be fair, I think Silva is well capable of winning this fight if he's actually serious and not simply doing this for the payday. And well, to be honest, I do think that he is quite serious about beating Jake, even though this might not be a proper MMA versus boxing matchup from his own perspective and in his own eyes. But let's be honest, for a lot of us, this fight is pretty much the sport of MMA versus YouTube boxing and maybe even boxing in general. Who knows? But yeah, I will leave it up to you guys to decide. Do you think Israel Adesanya's comments were a bad look on the sport of MMA, or do you feel that Jake Paul has the opportunity to shake up the world by beating Anderson Silva this weekend? You guys can let me know in the comments. I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, everyone.